Hey guys, welcome back to another Take 5. This time we're going to talk about structures. So first I'm just going to make a structure so I can kind of show you what it is while I explain it. So we're going to go to Blueprints and Structure, name it Attribute, Attributes, Attribute Struct, yes. Um, and Control Shift S to save all. Then we're going to go into our structure. And a structure here now, as you can kind of see, a structure is a big container, kind of like an array, but it's a little different. It's a container that only holds variables, um, and they can be of different types. So an array would hold is a container that would hold variables of the same type, right? A structure can hold a multitude of different types of variables. It can also hold more structures because structures can be variables. It gets really kind of crazy when you start stacking structures within structures, but basically I'm going to give you like a nice example of how I would use a structure. So let's say that we have, let's go here and let's get a texture. So we're going to go texture 2D. I want a texture 2D. I'm going to go new variable. We're going to actually move this up and we're going to call this, name. And I'm going to make this a string. Actually, I don't know if I want to use that. Let's not do that. Let's not do that. Let's go, let's not do a name. Let's just do we'll just call this the thumbnail, right? So thumbnail. Then we'll do a boolean of some type just for some kind of thing. So we could say uh, um, actually let's just leave the boolean off. We don't really need it for this example that I'm going to show you. So two other variables we're going to use are going to be floats, and they're both going to be floats. And I think I was kind of expressing this in one of the previous videos here, where basically we're going to create an attribute threshold like structure where you can grab the thresholds of values based on these specific things. And so let's just say that this is critical. We'll just call this min, and this one max, right? We don't need them to have anything specific. So we're going to have two floats and a texture. Now the texture could be a representation of whatever you want it to be. It could be like a picture of that type of thing. So if you did this with like weapons, you could have a weapon picture and it can have other information. But what I'm going to do is I just put the texture in there really for shits and giggles. But really we're going to use the min and the max. And so we're going to go back out to our blueprint that I've been messing around with here. And I have this map that I made, and this map has it's basically light colors, which doesn't need to be called light colors anymore because I changed what it actually has now, and I created other names inside of it. So the entries now are different. It's not red and blue and white like it was in the previous video. It is now critical strike damage, cold resistance, and attack speed, and these are set like that. So what I'm going to do is right now it's mapped to values of integers, which means you can only have one thing, right? You've got your critical strike and it's mapped to the one integer. But what we're going to do is we're going to map it to our attribute struct. So attribute and and we're going to make it the enumerator mapped to the attribute struct. So now we're going to come back in here. We're going to click that to cold resistance, and we're going to drop down this arrow. And so now we have cold resistance that can come with a minimum and a maximum value. So you could say that you want the minimum cold resistance that you could get as a drop on an item to be 0.1, which is 10%. You could also say that the maximum cold resistance that you want to be on a drop is 0.5, which would be 50%. And these values can then be taken out when you want to do something with them to multiply and have that work towards your gear and stuff like that. You can also have things like this icon that I put in here. Really doesn't matter. But again, because it's a map, you have to pick a different item if you're going to continue to add, as long as there are some. So a lot of times what I do with my maps are, or uh, with my enumerators, if I'm going to use a map, is I go up here and I change the enumerator to be no entry, just so that I know it's called no entry or no selection. And then when you go back in here, if you hit plus, it's going to go to no entry. Obviously, you don't want no entry, so you're going to want to change it anyways. So there you go. And then you can come in here and delete that one if you want to. But basically now we've got these different thresholds we can do for each one. So if I want critical strike damage, I could go 0.05, which would be 5%, to 0.1, which would be 10%. And attack speed could go, the same thing, 0.02, so 2% up to 10%. And those values can be then used. And so I'm gonna show you how we can use those. So if you had you were spawning, say, a bunch of items. Let's just say that we were spawning items with a for loop. So we go for loop, and we do this right here, and we spawn 10 items. So let's make this 9. So let's say we want to spawn 10 items. We can go every loop. We can take this. We can find some specific thing that we want, and we can grab it, and we can break it. Well, because it's a structure, it has this function or this feature that allows you to break open the structure and grab the items that you want. And so what you can do is you can go random float in range, and then you can say the range that I want to do is there they are, the minimum and the maximum, and then I want to take that and I want to set something with it. Maybe that specific thing that we just spawned, right? Spawn actor. Oops. From class. I keep hitting the key when I don't want to. Come on now. So, and you could have a variable that is exposed on spawn that shows up that you can plug this into, and it would allow you to pass that information right into it. You can also use just arrays, so you don't actually have to have a map to anything specific like this. But that's a lot of how you'd use maps in conjunction with structures to create some really nice flow to get data passed around in a really convenient way that you can understand it and you know what's happening, and it doesn't have to look all like numbers all the time. So I think that is, and structures can basically take any type of variable pretty much. You can have classes in there. You can have whatever you want. It's all available. You just come in here and you can pick whatever you want. If you want it to be an actor, if you want it to be a material, you can do materials, anything like that. So this one's getting a little bit long, so I'm going to go ahead and just call it right now. And I think that shows you enough about structures that you'll understand what they are and kind of how to use them. The only thing I didn't get to show you was actually a structure within a structure. So let's just check this back to take this back to here, and let's go structure attribute struct. There you are. And let's just go an array of structures, and we'd say like this is our array, and we could do a for each. And if we had this structure had a certain number of items in here, each one had a picture, and you wanted to spawn something that had that picture and some information. It doesn't have to be float values, right? Just you wanted to spawn a bunch of squares or something that had these icons on them. You can do that with the structure, and it can have this other information to go along with it. Like maybe you wanted to set the color, maybe you wanted to set something else like a name. You could have this be names instead of float values. You could change the structure to have strings or something like that, and then you can go in here and break those items while you're inside of the for loop, and those things can be passed right into the the class that you're spawning or the object that you're using. You can also just pass this into the object, which is the struct, the actual structure of that index. So the array, maybe array loop 1, right? We could get loop 1, we could get this picture right here, and the items that go with it, and then on the second loop, or the third loop, this would actually be, you would get this picture, and you could pass all that data all in with one structure, and then they can break it apart later on down the line and use the values that they need. So yeah, that's about it, and I think I covered it. Yep. All right. Thanks for watching.